Welcome back. This is Charlie Pellerin doing the third narration on our three-day workshop slide set. And we're going to begin with a segment that I call the 4D system, assessments and contexts. I'll show you a Jungian coordinate system that analyzes what Diane Vaughan talked about as being invisible and unmeasurable into four distinct dimensions. We'll see how those four dimensions address fundamental human needs. And this explains why the 4D processes work worldwide. We have perhaps 150 dashboards now operating in different countries, and it works everywhere. I'm going to come back to this idea of connecting behavioral norms and context and show you examples of four specific behaviors and the context they create. I'm going to take a look at the assessment benchmarking process and your results, your TDA results, if they're available. By the way, we normally do not do workshops for teams without a TDA first, team development assessment, because if they're in the bottom quintile, the workshop is much more effective if we stop and fix what's ailing the team and then do the workshop. I'm going to show you how the team development assessments are structured and work, beginning with the online segment and then the more important team building segment. We'll then take a look at a team score histogram, how we build these things, and you might find this kind of fun. And then we're going to contrast bottom quintile teams with top quintile teams. I think the difference in performance to you will be very obvious. And our previous segment, this is what we covered, these four big accidents, magnetic field is a metaphor for context. How we do uniquely, I believe, simultaneous leader development by managing context. You have already identified some uncomfortable realities that you don't want to previously address anonymously. And I explained the AMBER process, attention, mindset, behavior, results. That's at the core of all of our learning. So what we're going to do is see if we can't find a Cartesian means XY system that would analyze these unforeseen forces, change our perception, and let us see what was hitherto invisible. When I went to the University of Colorado and began to study leadership, someone dropped an article on my desk that said there's over 6,000 books and articles written about leadership. And the implication was clear. This guy was telling me, look, business school professors have written all these books and articles in the past. How do you think you could possibly contribute to a field that's been so extensively studied? And I thought about this and I said, well, there's two things that differentiate me from the rest of the 25 professors in the management department at the business school. I said, one is I've actually had a job. In fact, I've had some pretty big jobs and done them pretty well. And most business school professors have never worked except maybe briefly between undergraduate and MBA. But maybe more importantly, I'm a physicist. I studied physics for 5 years in undergraduate school and 7 years in graduate school, and you can't do this without dramatically affecting the way you think. So I'm asking myself, what is it from my physics background that could be useful? And I thought of a phrase we used to say to each other kind of jokingly when we were undergraduates. The right coordinate system can turn an impossible problem into two really hard ones. So I began to play with various coordinate systems using material from the so-called business books, which are, I think, actually quite useless for behavioral change, but fun to read. I like to read them too. And found nothing that made any sense. I was trying ever more complex ways to integrate this material into some structure, something that was a formula of some sort, and failing. And one morning in the middle of this, I went and picked up the daily newspaper, and there was a Dilbert cartoon. And the Dilbert cartoon said, every consultant makes his living with a 2x2 matrix. I said, aha, I've been making this too hard. It's an XY coordinate system. It happened at the same time I was reading some articles about personality development that Carl Jung had written in the early part of the last century. And this was a major aha moment for me. What he said is we built our personalities on innate preferences, meaning present at birth preferences, for one of two processes: how we make decisions, whether we prefer to use inherently prefer to use emotions or logic, and the information we choose to use, whether it's intuited or sensed. wow, I said, this is great. He's given me an XY system, he's given me the axes, and he's given me the labels for the coordinates. This is incredible. So anytime something has simplicity at its core, it has great appeal to physicists. This is how we think and work. So I began to see, if I put this coordinate system on things, what would I see, what would be revealed? And I went back to Jung's personality work and saw that when people have a preference for emotional deciding and intuitive information, they naturally value other people. This is really important because the need to feel appreciated is a core need. If you're familiar with Maslow's need hierarchy, at the bottom foundation there's physiological needs like air, food, water, warmth. The next level is security, and the next level is to need to feel appreciated. So I colored this green for the cultivating dimension in the sense that you're growing people. I looked in the next one, what I call these 4 areas dimensions because it's so much more lively a term than quadrants, and discovered that these are people that are heavily invested in relationships and building them and tending them, and they're very good at meeting the second most important human need after feeling appreciating, feeling included. We all need to feel that we're accepted and belong to the groups we associate with, whether they're family, whether it's country or business. It's a core human need. Next, in the blue sky dimension, the idea that these are people that have vision, come up with great ideas. And isn't it true we all need hopeful futures? Don't we need something to propel us out of bed in the morning and feel good about what's going to happen in the day? I think we do. And in the logical deciding and sensed information is the directing dimension, grounded in process and methodology. And so I think we all need to be able to understand and know what we and others hold us accountable for, and to be able to marshal the resources to succeed. These are universal human needs. They're in every one of the 4D processes. These needs are the same whether you're in China, in France, in Germany, in Korea, in Bulgaria, in the Czech Republic. These are some of the languages that currently, or Japan, some of the languages where we're currently operating dashboards. It's universal. Very important idea. Let me now return to this idea of connecting behaviors with context. The habitual behavior of expressing authentic appreciation creates a context of mutual respect and enjoyable work. Do you think people perform at higher levels when they feel they're respected by other people and they enjoy their work? Do you think people solve difficult problems more easily when they're enjoying what they're doing? I surely do. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you make this behavior more powerful and more habitual, you improve the context and make the environment more mutually respectful and more enjoyable. And that makes it easier to express the appreciation. So like many of our processes, this has a feedback loop, goes round and round and round, strengthening itself. And this is one of the reasons why teams go ever upward when they use these processes. A really important behavior in the including dimension is how you appropriately include others. And you need to, then the images on the left will show you, need to share power, information, and rewards, and not just financial rewards, but emotional rewards. And this will create an environment, a context where people interact authentically, and you'll have aligned, efficient action. So the reason that I phrase it this way is that if people feel excluded, it makes them angry. They will act out. This is a psychological term for expressing their anger outward. They'll destroy the teams. I've watched it happen over and over. Meeting these inclusion needs is vitally important to efficient workplaces. The next behavior I'm going to talk about is an interesting one. I call it 100% committed, and it changes perception. And I talked a little bit about this when all the trauma around the Hubble mirror flaw caused me to move into a space of 100% commitment and launch the servicing mission against the direct orders of both the head of NASA's Congressional Appropriations and the NASA administrator because my perception changed and I didn't see any risk in doing it. It looked like the only way to get out of the problem. Later in the workshop, you're going to investigate what you're committed to and at what levels. And it's really a matter of focus. It's a matter of focusing your attention in that time, that appropriate space, and then seeing the magical answer. Psychologists call this phenomenon the red convertible syndrome because many people can relate to this familiar experience. I remember when I was first in Boulder, Colorado, the People's Republic of Boulder as it's called, a Subaru is the national automobile. And every place I looked, I saw Subarus on the road. Well, I had an aging BMW and wanted to get a new car, and I just couldn't bring myself to buy a Subaru, although I kept saying, look, it's the only thing they have in Boulder, it's what you're going to have to get. Then one day I finally decided, nope, I'm 100% committed. I'm going to find another BMW. I like too many things about these cars. And so at that moment, I suddenly saw BMWs everywhere. Had another similar experience in Shanghai a couple years ago. I was there meeting a client, and they were very gracious, and they know my wife likes to collect UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So they got us a car and a driver to take us out into the countryside to see some things that would otherwise be impossible. And so end of the day came, and we couldn't find the driver. He wasn't anywhere to be found. He wasn't there when he said he'd be. And we're in a little town in China, a rural place. I have no idea how we're going to find our way back to Shanghai. I don't speak any Chinese. No idea how to even begin getting a cab or a bus or anything to go back. And the car that brought us out was a dark black Camry. And I went on the street, and I'm looking for the driver, and I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety. And every car that came down the street was black. And I noticed this. I said, how peculiar. Every car is black. The driver came a few minutes later, and then he showed up, and I relaxed, and all of a sudden cars went back to being multicolored again. You'll see this for yourself. This is an amazing thing. And then finally, clarifying roles, accountability, and authority. And as we've worked with this over the years, it's quite clear that accountability is the most important of these, and this leads to clear and achievable expectations. And don't we all need to be clear about what others and ourselves are holding us accountable for and having the resources to succeed? So this is the connection between the behaviors. There are eight behaviors. I just picked the four that I talked about previously, and the reason there are eight, is that we want to sample each of the dimensions equally, and 2 is an optimal number in getting the most accurate response. Actually, sampling more behaviors is less accurate, while minimizing the time it takes to do the assessments and do the work. Now, I'll show you data later about the incredible effectiveness of these team development assessments in development, and that's why the A is in parenthesis. It does measure, but its more important effect is development or performance enhancement. And so how does this work? Well, today we give everybody that does a team development assessment a copy of my book, How NASA Builds Teams. And my book is a reference guide to all the other material, because everything is organized by the 4D system. And the book goes through chapter by chapter, exactly matching the assessments. You go online and begin the process. There's a first page, gives you some familiarization instructions, why we're doing this, how it works. And then you measure each of 8 behavioral norms in your team. And I've already talked about 4 of these behavioral norms. And the assessment over and over teaches you why the behavior matters. It contextualizes this and explains to you why we're measuring that behavior and why it's important for you to master it. And then you see a standard. So some years ago, I was wondering how to measure the how to avoid the phenomenon of normalization of deviance, which I talked about with the Challenger launch decision people. I didn't have an easy answer to this, so I asked the question. I was musing about the question in a workshop, and somebody raised their hand and said, I know how you do it. And I said, well, tell me how I do it. He said, I don't know how I do it. You measure against the standard. And I thought, aha. So each of the 8 behavioral norms has a stated standard that you assess against, and you click a radio button to say our team's behavioral norms fully meet the standard, usually meet the standard, seldom meet the standard, or never meet the standard. and then you check the box, and we put numerical values on those and come up with a score. Then you're asked to explain the reason that you rated it and provide your rationale. So this process, as you go through it over and over, accesses the most powerful stimulant in adult learning, which is repetition. I used to think the online segment was the most important, but then later I figured out, no, it's the work after. So some years, by the way, this is a typical sort of data product, and I'll show you these in a little more detail later. Some years ago, we got it that the team leader was the crucial person in making this change happen. So now we take the assessment reports, we brief the team leader, and the team leader briefs the team. And then the team develops action items with our guidance. And here's what's so powerful here. Remember I talked about how difficult it is to move something from one context to another? These teams build action items that work in their context because they build them. This is another very unique factor in the way we do team building. We don't hold ourselves out as the experts to build a team. We turn you into the team builder using our tools to support you. Now, one of my favorite contrasts is the difference between using these tools in a 200,000 person shoe factory in China versus nuclear reactor plants in France. And I can tell you that the action items they develop are probably very different. But this is the crucial part of the step. This is the thing that makes it work when the team picks this up and puts these action items about team building in with their regular action items that they're doing every day, and they've become team builders and haven't even noticed we've done it. Powerful stuff. Okay, so what do we do with the data? First we built a histogram, and by the way, this is the 300 teams first assessments, and we have today 1,500 teams in the database, and I'll show you why later at the end of this set of narrations why we stopped at the first 300. We build a histogram organizing them into bins by frequency. Then we fit a curve over the top. And then we divide the area under the curve into 5 quintiles. Now the reason we do this is I like to teach people to talk about their assessment score in terms of the quintile and not the numerical value. There are 2 reasons for this. One is that the idea of statistical precision is a difficult one for people who haven't studied it. And it's too easy to believe that a score of 86% is different from a score of 90% when statistically it's probably not. And the second reason is I think the quintile is a more reasonable estimate of the precision of the score. So we talk about teams according to the quintiles they're benchmarking in. Let's take a look at the social context of a team that benchmarks in the bottom quintile. They feel unappreciated, members do. It's full of conflict. People feel excluded, and this makes them angry and act out the anger. Trust is low. Agreements are broken right and left. Blind optimism rules the day. There's low commitment to anything that matters. The team's full of victims and blamers, and they're disorganized. On the top end of the scale, the teams have a context of mutual respect and high collaboration. People feel included. They enjoy their work. They have high trust levels. Grounded optimism grounded in reality rules the day. High commitment, 100% commitment in many cases. Drama is not permitted. All action is aligned with what's got to be done. Accountability is clear and understood. This is a rhetorical question. I apologize. Which context would you rather live your life in? And here's the main point here. You have this choice. At this part of the presentation, I would normally include the team's actual team development assessment data in a couple summary charts. Because this is not a real team, but a train-the-trainer presentation, I've just shown you some typical team development data. This is what happens if team leaders want to do this. Here's a team started in the bottom quintile, then moved up. It's a very common pattern. And you can see our estimates of the performance went from getting 57 cents of value on the dollar to 81 cents of value on the dollar. This is typical too. We normally redo these assessments about every 4 to 6 months. And so it takes a couple of years to make this change. And people sometimes say to me, well, Charlie, you know, wow, I say, couple years to make change, that's kind of slow. Actually, I think when you're changing behavioral norms, this is the speed of light. I don't know how it could be done any faster. This is another product we provide. You can see here how different team members, and by the way, it's always anonymous with respect to who did what, how different team members see the same team. Here's a person that sees the team very, very negatively. The storyline I run about this is not that this is a bad person, but there's something that doesn't match them in the context. Maybe they're in a job they don't want or don't know how to do, or maybe they just don't want to be in this place at all. And so the remedy here is a conversation with the team leader, and during the briefing I urge the team leader to invite this person to come talk to them, see what they can do to help. And over here is a person who similarly sees the team very, very high. And I would ask in the briefing for the person, if they're in the room, to please say why they did that, and it's probably interesting. This is a chart we'll come back to over and over in the workshop. In fact, I actually like to write this chart in a summary form on a flip chart and have it on the wall and point to it as we go through each behavior. This is useful for the team to see behaviors that are relatively low and focus their attention on them. This works very, very well. Okay, that completes narration 3. I'll give you a little preview of what's coming up. We're going to do our first diagnostic with the team, finding your innate personality foundation. There are 4, again, matching the 4 dimensions. Talk about the importance, particularly for projects, of matching team personalities to tasks. I'm going to make an analogy between innate personality and handedness. Just as we all use both our hands, most of us, or all of us, I think, are either right-handed or left-handed. The same way we use all 4 parts of our personality, all 4 dimensions, but one is much more comfortable for us. You're going to find this by looking at your own innate deciding and information preferences. Do this when you use a short little quiz about who you are innately. It's only 14 questions. It's proven to be extremely accurate and reliable, beyond what I would have thought. We're going to actually chart your team's distribution and see how efficient it looks like it is. Then we're going to show you examples of people who may have struggled in other places but succeed in their innate strength. And this summarizes where we've just been. And that completes narration 3. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to talking to you about the next segment shortly. Have a great day wherever you are. Charlie Pellerin signing out. Bye-bye.